Dr.NightEchos. I thought I was the only one until I started talking to my coworkers during the break last Tuesday. We all work the same overnight shift at the processing plant, so we usually see each other coming and going. On that same night, every single one of us, all 6 people on the floor, showed up late for the morning handover. It wasn't just a few minutes. It was like the entire world had paused for nearly an hour. When we tried to piece together how we got there, none of us could actually remember leaving the building or the drive home. We were all just standing in the parking lot at sunrise, blinking at our keys like we had just woken up from a dream we couldn't quite catch. I noticed one guy, Mike, kept staring at his boots. They were caked in thick, wet mud, which made no sense because it hadn't rained in weeks, and he only ever walks from the paved lot to the plant entrance. Another guy had a raw, red burn mark on his wrist that looked like a perfect, clean circle. He didn't even know it was there until I pointed it out, and when he touched it, he didn't flinch at all. We started talking about the strange, heavy humming sound we all heard right before the shift ended, but we had to stop when management pulled us into the office. They told us not to speculate, and that there were technical issues they were handling. They seemed nervous, looking at the door instead of at us. When I asked to see the security footage to see what time I actually walked to my car, they told me the cameras in the parking lot had malfunctioned at the exact time we all went missing. I still have a metallic taste in my mouth that won't go away no matter how much water I drink. I catch the other guys staring at the clocks now, counting the seconds to make sure they are still moving at the right speed. None of us talk in the break room anymore. We just sit in the silence, waiting for the shift to end. I was driving back from my late shift at the warehouse around 3 a.m., taking a route I have driven 100 times. Suddenly, my GPS glitched out and rerouted me onto a narrow dirt road I didn't recognize. I assumed it was just a shortcut I hadn't noticed before, so I turned onto it. The woods closed in almost immediately. The trees were so close to the gravel that their branches scraped against my side mirrors, and the path felt like it wasn't actually meant for cars at all. The deeper I drove, the stranger things got. My radio, which had been playing clearly, suddenly filled with a loud, aggressive static that made my ears ring. A second later, my engine just died. It didn't sputter or stall. It simply lost all power, and my headlights cut out, leaving me in total darkness. I sat there for a moment, my heart hitting my ribs, trying to reach for my phone. Then, a bright, clinical white light appeared on the road ahead. It was so intense I couldn't even see the dashboard in front of me. I felt a weird, heavy vibration in my chest, and then everything went blank. I woke up gasping for air, sitting in the driver's seat of my car. My engine was idling perfectly, and my headlights were back on. I wasn't on the dirt road anymore. I was parked on the shoulder of the main highway, miles away from where I had turned off. I looked at the clock and realized I had lost 2 hours of time that I can't account for. My clothes felt damp, and there was a fine layer of gray dust on my steering wheel that smelled like burnt matches. I tried to go back and find that turnoff the next day. I drove that stretch of highway 4 times, but the dirt road isn't there. It isn't on any paper maps or satellite images either. I have this constant ringing in my ears now, and my car won't start if I'm wearing my watch. I still have to drive that way for work, but I keep my eyes strictly on the pavement ahead, terrified I'll see that gap in the trees again. My brother and I were camping in a remote part of the woods last summer. It was a clear night with no wind. We were sitting by the fire when the woods went completely silent. No crickets, no owls, nothing. It was like someone had hit a mute button on the world. We looked up and saw a dull, metallic disc just drifting slowly above the tree line. It didn't have any lights, but we could see the stars disappearing behind it as it moved. We both felt this strange, heavy vibration in our chests. We didn't talk. We just stared at it until it vanished. The fire didn't even crackle. It was like physics had just stopped working for a minute. We decided to pack up and leave immediately. Neither of us said a word until we were back on the main highway. My brother asked if I felt heavy, and that's exactly how I felt. Like my body weighed twice as much as it should. When we got home, we realized our watches had stopped at the exact same time, 12:12 a.m. We had been at the campsite for 4 more hours after that, but we only remembered about 10 minutes of it. My brother started having these vivid dreams about a cold metal room and a clicking sound. He says the sound feels like it's coming from inside his own teeth. A few days later, I found a small circular bruise on the bottom of my foot. It didn't hurt, but it was perfectly symmetrical. Ever since that night, our electronics act up whenever we're in the same room. Our phones will restart for no reason, and the TV changes channels on its own. I saw my brother yesterday, and he looked exhausted. He told me he saw that same metallic shape through his bedroom window last night, just hovering over his neighbor's yard. I haven't slept with my blinds open since. I keep thinking about that clicking sound. I wonder why it feels so familiar to me now. One evening, I was just sitting in my living room watching a movie, and the next thing I remember is waking up in my own bed feeling completely disoriented. I thought I had just fallen asleep on the couch and moved to bed in a daze, but when I looked at my phone, the date was 3 days later. My battery was dead, and when I finally got it charged, I had dozens of missed calls from my family and the police. They told me I had simply vanished. My keys, wallet, and phone were all sitting right on the coffee table where I'd left them, but I was nowhere to be found for 72 hours. The police had searched the entire house with dogs, and they found absolutely nothing. There was no sign of a struggle, and no way I could have left the house without being seen by my neighbor's security cameras. I have no memory of those 3 days. It's just a total, terrifying blank. I don't feel like I was asleep, though. My body felt exhausted, like I had run a marathon, and my skin was incredibly dry, almost peeling in places. I found a small, circular bruise on the back of my neck that looked like a perfect, clean puncture mark, but it didn't hurt at all. Since I've been back, everything feels slightly off. Familiar objects in my house look like they've been moved a fraction of an inch, and I can't shake the feeling that I'm being watched from the corners of the rooms. My family is relieved, but they look at me with a kind of pity and fear that makes me want to scream. I went to the doctor, and they ran every test imaginable, but they couldn't find anything wrong with me physically other than slight dehydration. I try to go about my day, but I catch myself staring at the clock for hours, terrified that the numbers are going to jump forward again. I'm scared to close my eyes at night because I don't know where I'd go when I'm not here. I just want to know where I was for those 3 days, but a part of me is even more afraid of the answer. I was on the roof with my friend Lisa, just looking at the stars and talking, like we did every weekend back in high school. It was a clear, quiet night until this pulse of white light just opened up in the sky directly above us. It wasn't a flash. It was a steady, heavy glow that made the shingles under my hands feel like they were vibrating. I remember looking at Lisa and seeing the light reflecting in her eyes, making them look completely silver. I thought we had only been staring at it for a minute or two before the light suddenly blinked out, leaving us in total, freezing darkness. We climbed back through her bedroom window, laughing about how weird it was. But Lisa's parents were standing in her room looking terrified. They started yelling, asking where we had been for the last 3 hours. I looked at the clock on her nightstand and my stomach just dropped. It was after 2 a.m., but I distinctly remembered it being just past 11 p.m. when we saw the light. I didn't have a single memory of those missing hours. There was just a blank, cold space in my head where that time should have been. For years, I told myself it was some kind of group hallucination or a weird weather event. But lately, I've started remembering things in pieces.
I'll be sitting at work and suddenly I can feel the sensation of cold, smooth metal against my back. I remember the sound of a high-pitched humming that felt like it was coming from inside my own skull. In these flashes, I see Lisa lying on a table next to me, but her face looks flat and wrong, like a mask that doesn't fit right. I called her last week to ask if she was seeing things too. She got very quiet and then hung up on me. I found a small, hard lump under the skin of my inner elbow that wasn't there before. It doesn't hurt, but it moves slightly if I press on it. Every time I look at the night sky now, I don't see stars. I just see that blank white space waiting for me to remember the rest. I woke up at exactly 3:12 a.m. because I heard my son Leo whispering in the hallway. When I got to his door, he was sitting perfectly upright in bed, staring at the corner of the ceiling. He didn't look scared, he just looked expectant. I sat on the edge of his bed and asked him what he was doing awake. He looked at me with very flat eyes and asked when the night doctors were coming back to finish. I tried to laugh it off as a nightmare, but he started describing them in a way that made my skin go cold. He said they don't walk like we do. They float just an inch off the carpet and wear clothes that look like moving silver. He told me about a room they take him to that is so bright it hurts his eyes, where they make him lie on a table that feels like a block of ice. He said they told him it was a secret and that he shouldn't tell me, but that it was hard to keep quiet because of the buzzing in his head. The part that really bothered me was when he said they put a long, thin needle into his nose. He said it didn't hurt. It just felt tight. And then they told him he was brave. I've never let him watch anything scary, and we don't even have a TV in his room. He's only 5. He shouldn't even know what a medical procedure looks like. Last night, I woke up to a heavy, metallic smell in the air. I ran into his room and found him sitting up again. He had a steady stream of dark blood coming out of his right nostril, soaking into his pajamas. He didn't even try to wipe it away. He just looked at me and whispered that they were standing right behind me, watching us both sleep. I turned around, and for a split second, the air in the corner of the room seemed to ripple, like heat off a road. Now he won't go near that corner, and I can't stop checking my own nose every time I wake up. I woke up at 3:14 a.m. because the air in my room felt heavy and tasted metallic, like I was licking a battery. I tried to roll onto my side, but my body wouldn't respond. I looked toward the foot of my bed and saw 3 shapes standing there in the dim light. They were short, maybe 4 feet tall, and very thin. Their skin didn't reflect any light from the street lamp outside. It just seemed to absorb the darkness. Their heads were far too large for their narrow necks, and they remained perfectly still. There was no sound of breathing, and the usual hum of my refrigerator in the kitchen had stopped entirely.
The silence was so thick it made my ears ring. One of them slowly lifted a hand. It didn't look like a human hand. The fingers were long and moved with a jerky, mechanical rhythm. As it pointed at me, I felt a sharp pressure build up inside my ribcage. It felt like something was being pushed down from the inside of my chest, forcing the air out of my lungs without me exhaling. It wasn't painful, but it was deeply intrusive. I tried to blink, hoping to break the trance, but when my eyelids closed, I heard a faint, rhythmic clicking sound right next to my ear. When I opened my eyes again, the sun was hitting the wall. I was lying in the exact same position, but the metallic taste was gone.
My digital clock was blinking 12 o'clock, as if the power had surged.
I sat up and felt a dull ache in my left shoulder. When I pulled my shirt aside in the bathroom mirror, I found a small, dark bruise. It was 3 perfect dots forming a triangle. The skin wasn't broken, but the mark stayed there for nearly 3 weeks without fading or changing color. Even now, the air in that corner of the room feels colder than the rest of the house.